Patrea Patrick. And Patrea Patrick studied filmmaking at the California State University in Northridge. She made the short film Street 16 in 2005 as a student, receiving accolades for the script and the production's outstanding quality. Her work as the film editor includes credits for James Dean, Forever Young, 2005, Game of Life, 2007, Amazing Racer, 2008, and The Dead Undead of 2010. Making her feature directing debut with American Empire, the documentary released in 2013, she received critical acclaim, including praise from Oliver Stone himself for the film's informative and important subject matter. The film premiered in the Abu Dhabi Film Festival in 2013 and received a Gold Remy Award from the International Film Festival in Houston, Texas, and a Torchlight Award for excellence. Patrea Patrick is a researcher, editor, director, screenwriter, and producer with a passion and talent for making films that make a difference. As the name Heartfelt Films suggests, the subjects of her documentaries and films are close to the heart and of importance for our perceptions, our society, and our world at this time. She currently has a number of documentaries and dramatic films in development and production. Titanic, A Perfect Crime, explores many of the untold stories about Titanic, intriguing revelations, and historical data in an action-packed drama. This is the first novel for author Patrea Patrick, a director and documentary filmmaker who grew up in Hollywood. Through her research into the period of history from several angles, Patrick has brought together insightful and astounding revelations in her masterful way. And written as a fiction novel, this story interweaves historical facts with an exciting dramatic storyline that will take you deeper into the secrets of Titanic than ever before. And this is one story not to be missed. We're going to get into that tonight, too. Of course, her film is Heartfelt Films, LLC, and you can access. I'm going to put some links in there to the websites and the YouTubes for you, and you can access heartfeltfilms.wix.com/Titan ICAPER Perfect Crime. I'll post it in the chat for you guys. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and roll out here. Please welcome Patrea to the show this evening. Hello there.
Hey, I'm glad that we're going to be talking about Titanic because this is a story that actually has, we've seen 3 big movies over the last 50 years on Titanic, and what they really were, they were great films, but they were really like love stories that could have happened on the top of a mountain or in a burning building, and they really didn't get into the essence of what was going on with Titanic. And so I thought it would be so beautiful to write this story that's the testimony of the key witnesses. These are the survivors that were in the lifeboats, that were actually watching what happened and saw Titanic go down. And when they got back and they were at the hearings, and there were 2 hearings held one on the east coast of the United States in New York, and then one in England. And they were both on these hearings that people were told that they weren't to talk. They were, in some cases, taken, like in England, they were taken. Some of the crew members were taken aside and told what to say, and they were told that they were wrong in saying that the ship went down in 2 pieces. And the women that were the survivors, these were very wealthy women in these boats, and they were sober, and they were sharp, and they were these high elite class women. And they were told, "Oh my God, no! What you saw, you must have been in shock, and of course you were traumatized, and of course the ship went down in one piece." And many of these women went to their death saying, "No, I know what I saw. I saw it go down in 2 pieces, and what's going on." And the official records, I would love to see the official records today, because since the ship was found by Robert Ballard, in, I think it was 1987 or something like that. Maybe it was 93. They I think it was 87, and then in 1993 they went back down there again. But the fact is, they did find it in 2 pieces, and right. So when these women that were on the ship saw that, why was their testimony not taken into account? Why was it shoved off? We have to look at this, because if this is how you sort of start cases, you look at that, and if that's not true, then what else isn't true? If if that's being suppressed, what else is being suppressed? And it just led to this most beautiful story of Titanic, the perfect crime. So I think people that want to dig deeper into the truths and the real people who were on the ship, what they were, who they were, what they were doing at the time, where they were coming from, what was their relationship to what was happening at the time. It's a fascinating story, and I was never a big Titanic fan, but when I started looking into a screenplay I was writing, I just started finding out all this information, and I just researched farther and farther and farther, and I just said, I have to do a book on this because it's just too interesting, and I'm surprised it hadn't been brought out into the forefront. But we must remember that the ship was only found a short time ago, really, in our realm, even if it's 20 years or whatnot. But it's really been there's not really been enough time for somebody to put it together and go, oh, okay, here, let's do a book or whatnot. So I just decided to take that time, and I think people will really like this book. It's out now for Christmas. If people want to grab it for a Christmas present and give it out to their families, it makes a perfect gift. I've even been giving some away for Christmas. So it's
stocking stuffers. They're great.
Yeah, it's a thriller, but yet you're not just telling incidental stuff that I'm making up. It's all tied together with the facts, and then tied together by a parallel story of a film documentary maker who's going down and figures out a lot of these facts.
It's based on historical records that you were accessing, right?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So it just was. I was fascinated, and I would say I'm just a regular person, but it's one of these stories that just Titanic is a masterpiece of history, and we should know more about it and understand, because I think if we use Titanic just as a reference point, we see how this could happen in other realms too. And I don't want to give the story away, but when you're finished, you could see it like, oh, I could see if they could do that here, then this could be done over here. And I think that's that thing where that famous line comes, history repeats itself. And so this is one of these books you get a lot out of understanding, okay, we can't let these things happen, and we can't let them be swept under the rug.
I so agree.
Once you know these kind of things, we need to bring them to the forefront. We need to know. We need to know why people will shut up and at least question it. It's fine, and it's a beautiful ride. It's a fun, exciting ride. I'm actually hoping it'll get made into a film. But
I was going to say, well, you're the one who you produce the documentaries. Have you thought about doing that?
I actually want to do a film, and that's actually how it started. I wanted to do a film on it. But I would say in doing the book, it's so much more in depth than you can do in a 2-hour film. The book really, it really gets all the nuances that are needed to take you really through the story. So
right.
I think either one will be fine and fun, but I'm glad that there's a book out there, because I didn't want to wait while I was trying to look for funding, because that's always really the slow thing, is trying to find film funding.
Right.
And it's a little bit of money to make that film, because some of the ships and things needed.
Oh, absolutely. Well, how can people purchase your book? Is it on Amazon?
Actually, it's on CreateSpace, and I can give you that link.
Yeah.
And that's it's all that HTTPS /
Okay, I think I posted that. If I haven't, I think I have it here, so I can post it in the chat room.
Yeah, it's all that with just createspace.com/5580455.
Okay, and they can actually go into CreateSpace and just access the title of the book itself, right? Probably just pull it up like that.
I think so. And they can also go to Titanic, A Perfect Crime on Facebook itself, and it has a little bit of write-ups about it, and it does have the link to it. So you can kind of read about it and think there's a little video on there I have too that shows me talking about it. Matter of fact, it was fun because Helen, I had the first copy of the book, and she just picked up her cell phone and started filming me as I was talking about it.
Nice. Oh, she's great. I
And
love Helen. She was
she was
awesome.
great, and she has the book A Handful of Seeds, and it's very eye-opening.
Hmm.
And so we became very good friends because we like the truth in these kind of things, and to dig farther into what what really is out there, the realms and the powers that be, and there's always a different story if you,
Right.
you
And
look for
Patrea,
it.
can you do me a favor? We're getting low audio on you here. Can you talk a
Okay.
little bit louder on your phone?
Sure,
Great.
sure.
Thanks. Just kind of put your mouth up closer to the phone, I guess. But thank you. Thanks, Jerry. So, yeah, it's good to get some feedback from the chat sometimes. Otherwise, we can't tell.
Right, yeah, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
that's what I had on Titanic, and I'm just excited to get it out for Christmas. As I say, it's out there. It makes a really great present, and then people can be sure they're getting a piece of history, but you're also getting this inside scoop that you would never get. This stuff, especially on J.P. Morgan here, he's a real lead
Stuff.
character, and I don't know if people. I never knew when I started investigating all this that actually J.P. Morgan of Chase Morgan Bank that we have now today actually owned the White Star Line at
Mm,
that time. Now, it was interesting because they didn't want an American to come in and own the shipping company. There was a law that the Americans, they didn't really want Americans in England coming in and taking over a whole line. But he had this subsidiary company. And that's where Morgan was very good at having companies that he owned, so it didn't look like he owned it.
mm-hmm.
And that's how he's able to do a lot of his Morganizing, as they called it back then. You know, Morgan in the game Monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
That
Oh.
was that game was based on him because he was just taking too much and pulling everything in and scooping it all up. And
Mm-hmm.
he had the steel industry, and he had the rail lines, and then he had the first energy companies. I don't know if people
Right.
knew that, and
Well,
the
yeah,
first
he actually
telephone.
screwed Tesla over too, Nikola Tesla. He's just bad news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he had the first telephone companies, and he just pulled it all. If somebody had an invention,
Mm-hmm.
he would scoop it up. His house was actually the first house to be lit with lights.
Mm-hmm.
It was a real novelty. So he also had the largest yacht, the largest private yacht ever owned by man in his day.
Not surprising at all. And so when the in the history, I know we can't probably get into the real details of the book itself, but insofar as the sinking of the ship goes, now I've heard a theory that some people say that wasn't the Titanic and that was switched out with the Olympic. Do you see any truth to that at all?
I see that there's a lot of stuff going on. I think you should read the book.
Okay, so you're not going to give anything away, but yeah, I have heard a lot of different stories pertaining to that, and also now it makes me wonder if they're trying to censor the testimony. It makes me wonder if why would they try to hide the fact that it went down in two pieces? I guess is the question, right?
That is the question. So I think you're hinting at some good stuff there, and I don't want to give
Oh,
things
that's okay.
away,
I
but
have to ask though.
oh my God, I think it's a really good question, and I think that it's instead of just knowing the answer, it's easy to know the answer. 2 and 2 is 4. But if you don't take the math class and understand why 2 and 2 and 4 and why that's a perfect, and it always will be 2 and 2, it's a perfect thing of math, then you respect it more. So I feel with reading the book, you'll understand, okay, why these things happen, because the answer is simple, but it's the leading up to why would these things
Hmm.
happen? Why did they do them? And how did they get away with this? This is what you really want to see. And I
Right.
think the book is so fantastic for those reasons that it gives you this overall picture, and it hasn't been done before. I think you will see some books that will talk about this or talk about what you just mentioned. Yes, there were 3 ships that were being built by the White Star Line, and we want to understand deeper what the whole story really is. So I feel like it's easy to give it away, but it's the ride, you know.
Right. No, I
And
understand. Yeah, you want to keep it a mystery, and yeah, I would propose that people pick up a copy of the book. How many pages is it?
Oh, I think it's there. I got it right in front of me. It's like 370, so it's
Well,
340.
okay, that's not too
340.
bad. It's not one of those killer books that are like 900 pages.
Oh my God, no! It's like 350.
That's decent. That's good. That's in between. That's great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
And it's a really neat read, and I just think you come away understanding Morgan's side and why he would do what he's doing, and who in fact would stand along with him to do some of these things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I just say, it's hard for me not to just say yes, go right straight to the end. But it'd be like if I was telling you about a movie or something.
Yeah, you don't want to give it away. There's no doubt about it. Well, we'll just pick up a copy if you're interested in reading, everybody. I would suggest I'm going to pick up a copy because I do like the Titanic. It's a love-hate relationship, but it is a very mysterious case insofar as the way things panned out with that ship. And there's a lot to it insofar as a multi-layer, shall we say. Now, also you talk about it's kind of like the game of deception. We have a lot of things going on here on the timeline that's very much hidden and cloaked to us. Although now we're seeing more and more things revealed, almost like hidden in plain sight is now transparency. So
yeah, and I think more people are interested in it. So I will say one thing here on Titanic, and what the book gets into is that it was known that there was going to be a war. Britain knew that, and they were preparing. Okay, what are we going to do? And let's get some. We have to get our Navy ready and our military, and we also need to, in case we lose, we don't certainly want to lose our gold. So we want to think what we're going to do. And so the premise of the book is that Morgan is asked, because he is a master banker. Mm-hmm. He is trying to be or he's being asked if he will take the gold from Britain and put that in safekeeping in the United States and invest it while the war is on, so that when the war's over, they would still have their cache of gold.
Interesting.
So guess where that was put?
Oh, really? Are you going to give it away? You're not going to say, are you?
Yeah. So I would just say, now that doesn't intrigue you to kind of.
That's very interesting. Now, is that based on true documentation?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So everything in here is based. It's mind blowing. I couldn't have made this up myself.
Wow. I want to read your book. Now I'm really interested. Where's the gold?
Yeah. So that's the whole startup of the thing. If nothing else, it's just fascinating. And and Morgan, you walk away respecting him. And I have it in a novel because I don't really want to get in trouble or anything with whatever. But so I kind of protected myself putting it into a nice, safe novel. But anyway, it is. You're going to see everything is based on facts and the real people. And so I can hardly wait to talk to people after they've read it, because it's real fun, and you can surmise all these things. And
when did it go live?
It just came out a couple weeks ago, I think it was.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, so, well, really good. Yes.
I just wanted it in time for Christmas so people could get it, and
it's a great time to release it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one. So. And I also had I had this other film too that I was working on, so it was real hard to try to get this book finished and keep working on the film and share my time back and forth. So I really wanted to give everything to this book. So I actually found that very difficult to stop and put it down, because when you're working on a film or a book, you're just on a roll, and if you stop, you can kind of, instead of going forward and picking up speed, you find it hard to stop and then lose things and then pick back up again. And so I just wanted to, luckily I had done most of my research already.
Oh, that helps quite a bit.
Yeah, so I had put all the research in, so when I started writing the book, I could just sit down, and I had it done within 1 year.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, when you read it in the details and all of that too, a few people who've read it are like, wow, did that really happen, or is that guy really true? And how did you find that all out? So it took a lot, but it's out there. It's just like, who wants to go look it all up? But when you see it all together, all the dots connected, it's
Right.
just fascinating that more isn't out in the open, like you
Right.
were saying.
Well, it
More
seems like
explained.
the other books that had the Titanic, other movies that were really classic, don't have this information insofar as the stuff you're kind of decoding along the way. So that's interesting how they avoided putting any real information that might have been controversial in the films.
It might have, but I think just the thing of just the immaculate name of Titanic and the
Hmm.
and the seeing it sink, like in Cameron's film. I mean, and then you put Leonardo DiCaprio in a love story. You didn't need anything else.
Hmm. Right. Yeah.
Whereas I didn't want to go that route, and nobody else had really. So, and I don't think in the other two earlier films, they still thought it went down in one piece.
Hmm.
So they didn't really have any of this information. And we didn't have the internet. It was harder to fly back to Ireland and get a lot of the information that I got. It was harder to get around and get stuff. Now
Hmm.
it was easier for me to get the information. Not that easy, but it still was easier. And I had to also be careful about the disinformation that's out there, or just information that may be wrong too. And
Right.
then take into mind too, you're just trying to make a good book, And at the end, I want a dang good book. And if it didn't happen that way, it should have.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad you put all the details together, and I look forward to reading it. There's no doubt about it. Once again, that's on Create Space. So if anybody wants to purchase that for the holidays, it's called Titanic: A Perfect Crime, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I like your name, Patrea, by the way. It's very pretty.
Thank you very much. It's kind of an Irish name.
Yeah, it's very
So
nice. It's like a melody. It's very pretty.
thank you.
Yeah, it flows with you, flows with your production. That's for sure. So what were you producing? What are you working on right now?
Well, I just finished a documentary that was based on the hardening of the United States electrical grid. Now, this is fascinating because what happened is in 2008, the information on the U.S. electric grid became unclassified. And so I was able to go around and interview these gentlemen on the subject matter, and there's some fascinating things going on with the vulnerability and just how delicate of a situation our grid is in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess we're the first documentary to come out and talk about this, so it will be a big deal. And working on it is just shocking. It's frightening. It's scary. It's mind blowing why somebody isn't stepping forward and making protection and an enforceable rule on the grid. And I will go ahead and explain to you what the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
But I would just say, first off, it was something I've been working on for the last 5 years, because I didn't want to just come out and have not enough documentation. I like documentation.
Mm-hmm.
I like the research. I'm not just trying to come out and do something that just isn't backed up.
Right.
So we started out with a film about the solar storm issue, because just the solar storm alone could hit the grid, and has hit the grid, and does hit the grid every day. We're hit by solar storms all the time, just like I live here in California, and we get little earthquakes all the time, and you don't even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
They just are small. And so that's how it is with the solar storms. However, with the solar storms, even though they're small, they're doing about $2 billion worth of damage every year just in California.
Wow.
Now, people hear me. I don't know it, because if a solar storm hits, it could hit right next to me, and I'm a human, so it doesn't affect me. But it can knock out equipment, or it can damage certain equipment, and that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, it's $2 billion. It's even higher than that now. That was the first estimates I got, but the second estimates are even higher. So the power companies know this, but that's they aren't doing anything. They would rather take the hit and just say, well, it's $2 billion, but we'll pay for it as we go along, and we're not going to try to fix it. We'll just take care of it through, as we get hit, we'll deal with it a hit at a time, and we'll pay it, make the customers, they pay, our bill gets put up a little bit more. We don't even notice it. But you put up a bill, I'd say $1 to everybody over, 3 to 10 months times 12 million people. I mean, that pays for it after a while.
Right.
So, point is that these solar storms can also be very big. So a solar storm will hit the United States or somewhere on planet Earth every so often, and every so often it'll be of a certain size. Just like every so often we're going to get an 8-point earthquake here. Maybe not very often, but in our life, over the lifetime of the Earth, they happen a lot. But over our lifetime, maybe there aren't that many. But the point is, when it does hit, it can only do damage to an electrical grid. So we've set our grid up when we first were hit with a very big one in 1859. We had one that was a real good size solar storm. And it only knocked out the telegraph wires, but it totally fried them. It fried them so bad that the telegraph stuff was just going out into the air after the lines broke. It was just like telegraphing into the air, these sparks of energy were going through the lines. Now, if we had one like that today, that size, it would completely knock out the grid that exists today. And it would especially knock it out because our grid is all tied together. And we've especially made it worse because we now have wires all across the country, and we've also done something called SCADA, which is Systems Compulsory, I forget what it's called right now, SCADA Acquisitions Compulsory Data Chips, something like that. And so it made the grid 10 times more sensitive to these solar storms. So instead of making our grid more resilient to solar storms, we've been not looking at solar storm data and building the grid so that it's more susceptible to these solar storms. So it's frightening that when one of these hits now, the consequences could be just from a solar storm alone hitting. It could knock out our fuel supplies because it would knock out the electricity that pumps our gas. Not only the gas to our cars, but the gas that heats our homes or the electricity that goes to heat your home. It would knock out all communications. Maybe our cell phones would work for a while, but the big communications between our military that wasn't hardened would, they might have some communications for a bit, but mostly, like, I wouldn't be able to talk to you or talk to my family much, or communications like with my bank, that kind of thing. Banking and finances would be very struck down, so you couldn't get money, take money out of your bank, couldn't pay for anything. Our water is also, all the reservoirs and all of the big water systems, all our aqueducts here in California are all based on the electricity working to move and pump that water to drink. And then it also has to move and pump all the sewage out. So our sewage would end up flowing back into the water supply. We would end up in such turmoil without clean water very quickly.
Right.
So our emergency services wouldn't work, and government services would be just in about as much a mess as we, as citizens, would be in. So this is something huge we're talking about, and I'm talking to you about it, but have you heard about this? Hardly ever.
Not very much. It's been addressed here and there, I think, on Coast to Coast and a few other shows. But it is a very big issue, and it's good to address it because not only with solar activity, I mean, that's one avenue, but I'm sure there are other ways to take down the grid. I mean, we could have an act of terrorism or whatever.
Let's get into
right?
that.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets scary. So I was on Coast to Coast, and I was talking with George Norrie about this. And I'm glad he's brought it up, and I want to commend you for having me on the show to talk about this because it needs to be brought out into the open where everybody's talking about it. And the name of the film now I'm going to talk about is called Black Start. And I would like that to be a household word for everybody after the film comes out. People should know what it means and know that it should never happen and prevent it as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So if that wasn't bad enough that a solar storm could do this, yes, you are very correct. We've already been hit here in California on a grid on one of our substations that actually is in Silicon Valley, which runs Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, our internet connections. That's the massive point up there in Silicon Valley. That substation was hit by terrorists. Okay, we don't know who they were. We don't know how they got away. We don't know why they did it. We don't know what their goal was.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's just no information. Usually on a case, you have some kind of idea who or where or why or how, or all we know is when that it got hit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is ridiculous. This is the FBI came back saying, well, we looked at it and we interviewed everybody and we looked at the case and we just think it was a disgruntled worker. Now, if you just look at it sensibly, me again, I love to do the research. You look at how many shots were fired with AK-47s. It couldn't be one guy shooting that many shots.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, getting away in a getaway car, and somebody has to go down. Somebody went down inside the substation, cut the cables. So to me, that would take another couple people to go down in there, know what to do and what sophisticated equipment to cut, because they wanted that the telephone lines were cut, but not to cut other things. So why? You have to wonder, why? I mean, this could have really damaged our infrastructure there, and we have no lead. There was a big $250,000 reward, and there was still no lead.
That makes no sense. What year was that? When did that happen?
This was in 2013.
Okay, I think I remember hearing about that. What's strange is, was there no security or surveillance cameras?
There was only a surveillance camera, and there were people, they believe, inside the substation and they just didn't see any of this happening. So what's interesting is we heard about it, but we didn't hear about it until 2014, a year later. Now, this is what's very bad, is that it was mostly suppressed on the news. Now, PG&E will come on and say, well, we didn't suppress it or anything, but you really didn't hear about it until 2014, when John Wellinghoff, the head of FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, came out and said, I want this known, and I'm going to talk about it, that we have a known vulnerability in our grid system, and we need to address this immediately. Mm-hmm. And he went to Rebecca Smith of the Wall Street Journal, and then it became news. But why wasn't it talked about for this year? It was suppressed, and then they came out and had a hearing, and I talk about that in the film. So they had a hearing, supposedly. Well, it turns out the hearing that was supposed to look at this grid weakness in the grid and talk about these transformers. Let's talk about the transformers for a second here. If you take out the transformers, which didn't happen at this substation, they just took out the cooling bin. So they were very careful, whoever they were, not to take out the transformer itself. And and that has to be questioned why. Mm-hmm. I know a little bit because I've interviewed some top officials, and I have to be cautious what I say. But the point is that if you wanted to take out the transformer, if they wanted to do that, they could have done that. So why they didn't, that's another question. Mm-hmm. But if they had taken out the transformer, we don't make transformers in this country. Transformers are huge. Some of them are so huge they're like 300 tons of the size of a building. They have to be moved on special railroad train cars, and there's only 6 of those that are in the United States that can move these. You have to move street lights and just completely stop traffic to get these things moved to the substation. And we don't make them in the United States anymore, so you have to order them. So there's a waiting list now, and we're not even on the list.
Oh.
So you have to make these things specifically for each substation because of the wattage and the amount of energy coming in and out and being transferred. They have to be made specifically for each station.
Mm-hmm. Where are they made outside the U.S.?
Like in Germany and South Korea.
Okay.
So, you know, and there's no saying that we're not even on the list, and there's no saying that anyone's going to put us to the front of the list either.
How foolish.
So
you think they'd have a backup system, right? Or backup transformers for emergencies?
Well, they're too expensive to just really. They're just expensive. The better thing is to protect them in the first place.
Mm-hmm,
so sure, because they're very, very expensive. They cost millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, or tens of millions. So the point is, lucky for San Jose that Silicon Valley that they didn't take out this, because if they had, it would have been gone. Now, if a solar storm comes, or the next thing is this EMP thing, it can fry the coils on those transformers. If you fry the coils on the transformer has to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
You can't repair it. It would be like an alien shooting your car with a laser beam and melting your engine.
Right.
And so once they're fried like that, you can't bring them up again. You have to totally replace it, which is now, you understand, you have to order them from another country. So the film gets into this very deeply. But at this hearing now that where I was talking about, John Wellinghoff came forward and said, look, we cannot have these transformer substations, the transformers at the substations out there sitting so fragile and vulnerable to anybody that wants to come up and do whatever to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of being given an award, he was ridiculed, and somehow he was forced to step down, or else he decided to resign. There's a lot of question around whatever, but he resigned.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that needs to be looked into deeper. You know, here's a gentleman coming out saying there's a known vulnerability in our grid. The people aren't protected. We are not protected.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a certain number of substations, known substations, that if you take those out across the country, will take down the entire United States grid.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a good point you make. And also, I'm wondering, are they even fenced in any form or design?
They're mostly fenced in, but that's not enough.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, it's not enough, and there are protections out there now. That's what I've done. I've gone around the country and I've looked at what protections are available, what the costs are, how long to implement, when, you know, how much by when could this get done. And again, it's the power companies that are saying, well, if we go ahead and start protecting them, then there's liability, and they're lobbying. It's liability and lobbying and the politics of the grid that is halting any protection starting to even happen. Mm-hmm. They're not even admitting right now that there is an issue, let alone are they going ahead and protecting it. And that's why I wanted to talk about the hearing. So at the hearing, they ended up talking about the leak. Like, how dare John Wellinghoff leak out this information that I just told you, that only a few of these substations taken out across the country could bring down the grid. Well, that was out there. That's out there, and our enemies, anybody who wanted to take out the grid, knew this a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Right.
All John Wellinghoff is doing, and all I am doing, is just telling you and telling the other people. And it's right that we deserve to know. We are the people. We pay our taxes. We live under a constitution, and we deserve to be protected by this country. Mm-hmm. And if our politicians are going to stand by and protect the power companies and say, oh, we're going to have a hearing and we want to find out who did these leaks, then I say we need new congressmen, we need new senators, we need to flush out that system, because they're so immersed in getting their paychecks, their campaign contributions are coming from these power companies, and of course they have to listen to them then, instead of listening to you and I when we plead, why don't you fix this problem?
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you.
So this film is really important. It's called Black Start. It will be out next year, early next year.
Excellent.
And I just want to get it out there in the biggest way, that it's a grassroots movement that we would insist. I guess it would be like Occupy the Grid, because we have so many issues that we could talk about and that we want to take care of. You talk about issues on your show all the time, and they all need to be addressed. And some may be more important to one person, and others may be important to another person.
Right.
But if we don't have the grid, if I don't have the ability to pick up my phone and to pick up my wallet and give you some money and to tell you I'm behind your crisis, then I'm useless. I can't even do that if I don't have, and I wouldn't have that ability. If the grid goes down, we can't do any other issue, because we won't be able to communicate. I won't have water to drink. I'll be dying in a very short time. The estimates are from the EMP Commission, which was put together in 2008, that was, they estimated like 200 million Americans would die within the first year because of this nationwide blackout. And you wouldn't, I don't want people to get mixed up thinking a blackout. Sometimes we have a blackout, and it's kind of fun. You barbecue for a couple of days, and you use candles and such stuff. This is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a grid down situation. Those transformers are fried on purpose by an enemy, or by a solar storm, or by hackers, which is another. So there's 5 threats that could do it. I mean, if we just had the solar storm to worry about, it would be bad enough.
Right. Let's talk about the hackers too. I wanted to touch on that. Any information you have on the hackers, the approach insofar as, so that would be an access to the back door to their control panels?
Yes. And they could be already in there. And I will just tell you another scary thing. If you'd like to go and work at one of the power stations, you probably can get a job there, because you don't need a clearance to get in there. So anybody, anything, like the new people coming over, our new neighbors now, they're coming into the country, can get a job there. And they could put sleeper cells in there. We don't know what's in there or what's happened, but boy, that is a frightening scare, because it's the simplest way. I would just say right now, no other country is going to go and say, okay, let's fight America, tank to tank, nuclear bomb to nuclear bomb, man to man. No, what they're going to do is go and just, what I say is just unplug us.
And they're going to infiltrate.
Yeah, it's already happened in Yemen. They already took out, the whole country for a while was taken down just by somebody coming and taking out the power grid. So, and as a matter of fact, we do it to countries. We've already done it to other countries to show them a lesson. And so it's just a matter of time that somebody is going to do it to us. And we can protect against it.
Right.
But we the people, first off, have to know, and that's why I did the film. If we understand that it's not being addressed, because the power companies will go, oh, well, we're protecting the grid. What are you talking about? Mostly what they'll say is we're protecting that we give you good service, which they do. I mean, most of the time I have my lights on. Most of the time my bill is pretty fair. Most of the time I'm not disgruntled with them at all, and I'm pretty happy about, having my lights and all of these conveniences, and it's wonderful. And up to the point I don't even think about it. It runs so smoothly.
Right.
But what they aren't taking care of is the transformers.
Yeah, that's a concern.
And so I get into the movie very deep because I asked the very question, look, why wouldn't they want to protect their own interest? It seems to me it would be in their own benefit to protect these huge transformers. And I don't even work there.
Yeah, it's common sense.
why? So you have to look at it, and I go into the movie deeply about about liability. That's where it comes from. So it's hard to explain it all in our conversation in this short amount of time, but I would say I can hardly wait till people can see the film and get this information.
Oh, they definitely need to know. And we have another hour too, so we can get into many levels of whatever you want to discuss. But where did you get the terminology black start?
Well, a black start is the term that the industry uses. That's their standard industry term for when a total grid down situation happens. So what happens is, that's never happened so far, by the way, but they have to know that somebody had said, like, look, one day you could have a total grid down situation. What do you do? How do you turn them all on again? Now, let's imagine we have a parking lot full of cars and all the batteries are dead. How can you take one car and jump all the other batteries? Well, if you just have one car that works, you can jump every battery in there and get all those cars running. But if you don't have one car that works, all of those batteries are dead and they will not come back on. So that is what we face with the grid down situation. If the transformers are all to go down by an EMP and they aren't fried. Now, if they're fried, if the coils are fried, they just aren't coming up no matter, you can jump all day, but they're not going to come up. If they're just down and you have to do a black start, you could bring them up again if you have live juice somewhere. And you have to bring them up slowly. You can't just bring them all on at once or you'll fry the whole system out again and then destroy the coils. So there's a very systematic way it has to be done, just a little bit at a time. And so that's called a black start.
That's really interesting.
And they've never done it before, and they've never wanted to even talk about it.
Oh, jeez.
One day somebody said, this is a scenario here, and you do have to put this in the book somewhere. And they were kind of like, well, put it on the last page somewhere so nobody will ever read it.
Oh, how foolish. What's interesting? Don't they have a backup system of some kind? I mean, any kind of backup generator system, anything?
Well, sure, you can have backup generators, but those need fuel. So they're good for a week. Okay, those like a hospital. They'll be good for a few days. Our military has some backup generators. But after 2 weeks, guess what they're relying on? Civilian power grid. So they're just as lost as we are. So there's anybody coming to our rescue if this happens. And this is what's terrible. In a normal situation, if there's a catastrophe, our military can come to our aid, our Homeland Security, or some of these the people that come in and help, FEMA or whatever. But in this situation, they're just going to say, look, I'm just better off to stay home and take care of my own family because my family's in bad shape, and I'm in that same bad shape too.
Right.
So now, I just want to say I would go to I can jump to that. So there's 5 threats here. There's the very first threat is just physical threats, which we've had in California. We had a physical threat. We've had one in Arizona, a physical threat on another power grid where they found a bomb in it. So these have happened. Now, we've been hit by solar storms. That is a fact. They've knocked out parts, not the transformers all the way, but they've done damage. They almost knocked out a nuclear power plant They knocked out a nuclear power plant for 7 days, but they were able to bring it up because it didn't fry the transformer. It just did some damage, and they had to shut it down for 7 days, costing $7 million in damage for 7 days.
Wow.
So we know we've had those 2. We also know we've had hackers. We've had that here in California. Just even with Sony got hacked. I mean, so we know there's hackers. But we've also gotten hacked by a different kind of hacking when we had the Enron situation. Now, Enron was very interesting. Enron, those heads at Enron were taking and calling each other and saying, "Hey, look, I want you to turn your grid off for your section of the grid off. I want you to put down the substation, and that way make it look like there's some problem when we have to shut it down, and we're going to buy power from Colorado or from up north, and that way we can charge more for it." and we'll make a bunch of money. We'll make $1 million like for 2 days for this phone call. Turn it back on in the morning, but overnight or however long that was, I don't know if it was a 2-day situation or how long it was off, but by buying the power from somewhere else, because of these long transmission lines, we're able to buy power. We're buying power from very far away if our power goes out, which is a good thing. If our grid falters, we can buy power from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But for Enron to be going, hey, let's just say that it's faltering and we'll turn it off like it's broken and we have to fix it and we'll charge more money. Well, that's very wrong. And that's what Enron was doing. I don't know if a lot of people really understood what was going on with Enron, but they got their little hand spanked for that, and in my estimation, not enough.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it shows you the vulnerability, the simplicity with which the grid can be tampered with. If Enron can do that just for making money and profit, what could a terrorist do that wants to do damage and harm?
Mm-hmm.
They could make it so that switch doesn't come back on again.
Exactly. And Patrea, we're going to head for a break, everybody. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here at Ravenstar's Witching Hour. My special guest is Patrea Patrick.